Yo, Spadez Gang. Welcome to the BK Spadez Show. I am your host, the BK Spadez, here with my very lovely co-host,
Novacaine, baby.
Alright, Spadez Gang, without further ado, let's jump into this show. Let's go. Alright, Spadez Gang, welcome back to the show. If you tuned in last week, which I know a lot of you did, we had a lot of trans talk on that last episode where we had a perspective of this from, well, I really didn't have much of a perspective, but I'm a male, so it was like,
sorry, I didn't.
Why am I talking? And then we had Novacaine, who's born a woman, and now we have another perspective of this conversation. Chae,
Chae,
what up?
Definitely glad to have you on.
Appreciate ya.
So we're gonna. I'm not saying we're rehashing the same conversation, but we're giving you another perspective today, maybe a bit of a discourse. So you guys bear with us. It's going to be a great show. We're going to enjoy this. Before we start, though, Chae, let us know a little bit about you.
For sure. My name is Chae Cantrip. I am a trans woman. I am a former professional martial artist. I taught Taekwondo professionally for 7 years straight. And while I was competing in Taekwondo, I was also competing in Sanshou kickboxing and Muay Thai kickboxing. Currently, I'm just an art nerd. And my socials are...
art, by the way.
Thank you. My socials are my name, so just at my name, Chae Cantrip, ChaeCantrip.
I've seen the art, and it's dope. Also, I've seen you like play fighting games.
I am the fighting game mom, yes.
Oh, y'all, listen. These people, you be doing them so dirty. I feel bad for them sometimes. Like, if it was me, I remember a few months ago at this point, I had just started playing Dragon Ball Z, the fighting game version. And you were like, You want to play? And then I seen, like, your video clips, and I was like,
Nah, I'm going to sit this out. I'm going to go ahead
this ain't for me. I have not picked that game back up. I was like, damn, I'll never be that good at it. I will never.
I spent a lot of hours in that game, for sure.
My son
I went to the
my ass
hospital
the
and was
other
playing
day.
in that game.
Really?
Yeah, I was in the hospital for a week, and I had my Switch, so I didn't have anything else to do. I was
So why not?
in the hospital bed with an IV in my hand, whooping people online in Dragon Ball.
So it's like your love, and we're gonna talk about the big chunk of this, and we're gonna come back to video gaming. But I just want to know, what was your love for video gaming? When did that start? You didn't sex. Hush.
I mean, always. Like, I've always loved games, but I always gravitated towards fighting games because my mom was a black belt in Korea. My dad was stationed in Korea, and he went over there and got his black belt. So martial arts was always a part of my family, too. So then, like, Street Fighter comes out, and I'm all about Street Fighter. Tekken came out, and, like, I'm outside trying to do all the Tekken moves. So naturally, I transitioned into, like, actual fighting.
Yeah, I've been trash at him all my life. All right, so we're gonna switch gears
Oh
before
my God.
Novacaine says anything else, because before we had a bit of a pre-show moment. She was like, "I told you."
I ain't saying nothing. I didn't say that.
You know,
I
I
don't
be
recall.
venturing off in conversation. This is what I do. So let's start like we started last week. Let's start with Umbrella Academy.
Okay.
It's a major show, really big show on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
The actor Elliot Page
My boy Elliot.
He played the character Vanya in the first 2 seasons, and then he transitioned in real life from Ellen Page to Elliot Page. And the writers and the director and everybody at Netflix decided to take the character that he played, Vanya, and transition the character. Mm-hmm. So I've seen the show. I love the show. I actually love the character, comic book, and all. Did not like the execution of how they played it. It just kind of fell flat. Like I said on the last week,
season a little bit.
I haven't finished the season yet, but
Spoiler.
Don't spoil it. Y'all know I'll be late. Listen, I have to watch it with my wife, and she's not here right now, so I gotta wait.
Oh, okay. Understood.
I haven't even been able to see Thor yet. But you know what?
That just came out.
Y'all heard my opinions. I want to hear Chae's, since she's the new person on the panel right now. So, what are your thoughts on the way, just the show event, however you want to take it? How you feel about it?
I felt like it was pretty balanced. I get what you're saying about it being kind of underwhelming in the way the transition was delivered in the show. It seems like something that they just kind of like squeaked past, you know what I mean? But I think for trans people, like my partner is also a trans person. My partner is non-binary. So we're watching it together, and I think it was fine because, like, as a trans person, if you come out to your family, you don't really want it to be this big hurrah. You know what I mean? You don't want it to be this big thing. You want your family to accept you. You want to have a dialogue so that you can talk about the changes and how to approach those changes in your interpersonal relationships. And then you kind of want to move on. And I feel like that's what they did with the show. They were just like, you know, Vanya is Vincent now. This is what the deal is. They have their little conversations. What was it?
Victor.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Victor.
I'm sorry.
One of those V's.
I almost lost it when you said Vincent, because that would have been way too much. That would have been way too much for me if his name was Vincent. Okay.
Yeah, Victor. And then, you know, they have their conversations off screen, and that's kind of it. And I felt like that was kind of the way to go, because as a trans person, I don't want the whole season to be about this transition. I want it to be about the Umbrella Academy. So, you know, get it out the way, and that's what they did.
You know, now that you mention that, this is kind of like how I've been fussing about like certain things that happen in certain shows all the time, and how it was so heavy-handed when they handle a gay person. They like turn it into such a big thing when it's just an everyday part of life. And I think you might be right, because now that you said that, and I'm thinking back, it probably was handled the best way they could handle that without making it a big talking point. Because you know how the nerd community could be. If they had to focus on it more so than they did, it would have been some big, super big controversy. It was already heated enough, even though Netflix gave us, like, I don't know, months and months to talk about it before the show actually aired. So that was actually a perfect point. I can't really be mad at that or disagree. No,
I definitely understand the point. The only issue that I had with the character a little bit was it just felt like the character there was nothing really leading up to the transition until season 3. So it was like, it felt a little out of place for the story overall, but I do understand why, because Elliot in real life made that transition, so they wanted the character to reflect that. So I understand both points, but it just felt a little out of place to me. That's just, I said that in the other episode in the season premiere, that it just felt a little out of place for the story itself. Like, okay, Victor, we see you, son. Like, now what? Like, okay.
I love the way his family reacted to it, though.
Yeah,
they were just like,
yeah,
okay.
Okay, now cool. What? Right, they said the same thing. Now what you want to do? Okay, are we going to save the universe or?
Right. So I honestly dug that. I was saying that when I was watching. I was like, that was actually really good. That part I loved. It was just like I would have loved like at least one episode where it was like they gave us something. But again, I'm good with it.
But that whole season, honestly, to me, it just felt a little flat.
I mean, Diego got a whole son out here.
No,
kinda.
He didn't finish. Remember?
Oh,
remember? He didn't finish.
He so the kid is like, I feel like he was not like a big part of the season. Like, they have their moments with the kid, and then Diego's like, all right, go do something. So, like, From the moment they introduced this.
Wait a minute. Did they just, the moment where he just dismissed him and sent him through New York by himself, he just kind of was like, that's it, go? Was that the last? That wasn't the, they didn't.
No.
They didn't Judy the kid,
wait, BK. What episode are you on?
I don't know, like 3.
Like 3?
3? No, that's not the end of the kid in the series. But it is a common theme in the series where, like, Diego will go do superhero stuff with his family and then also be like, okay, I'm supposed to be taking care of this child, but also child, just, like, go do something for a while and we'll catch up with you later. Like, it's a common theme throughout the season. So, yeah, does he have a son? Mm-hmm. But it still feels like kind of?
I feel like that's a minor spoiler. Does the kid... You know what? Never mind.
Don't ask any questions that you don't want answers to, fam.
Just know Ashtray needed a job, so there we have it. Okay, BK, that's all you need to know right now until you finish the series.
That's all I
mean, the
got,
season.
baby.
Ooh, don't want to chop it up to the game yet, but I don't know if a season 4 is on the way or not.
They better finish the story.
I hope they finish the story, but
we're gonna have to wait for so long.
I mean, I'm not that interested at this point, so. I mean, it's an okay adventure, but I messed myself up by like researching comics, and then I'm like, wow, the comic storyline is so much more intuitive than this watered down stuff, which is why I can't read certain Marvel storylines because I know they're coming in the movies. So if it's not something new, I don't go back and read the old stuff. Not anymore. All right, we got to move on. Anybody else got anything to add to Umbrella Academy before we move on?
I just wanted to go back to Novacaine's point to where it feels like they just kind of threw it into the season. And I think that's partially because, as she mentioned, like, Elliot transitioned between the seasons. So there wasn't really anything in the last season to, like, that they had to lead up to that. But also, I think, like, in real life, it's kind of just like that. Because, like, for trans people, like, we know, or, like, it might take us some time to figure out we're trans. But it's usually there's a good amount of time between figuring out that you're trans and then going to other people with it. Especially for like the anxiety of like, are my family and friends going to accept me? Like, how many people am I going to lose by telling people this? So like for the close relationships of that trans person, it does just kind of come out of the blue. Like when I transitioned, I was married at the time and my ex-wife was like, I had a husband like 3 weeks ago and I have a wife now. So I felt like that was pretty accurate.
Okay.
No, at the beginning of this, I failed to say that Chae has been on the show before. This is not her first time on the show.
It's been a minute though.
Yeah, it was like season 1, right?
It was season 1, I believe. It was just me when I was solo dolo as a host.
When you were solo dolo.
I'm gonna be honest. That episode was like really scary because I knew at that point, I was gonna say some shit that I wasn't supposed to say, but the ladies did not curse me out that episode, and I don't think I did that bad. But
I think it was fine.
Going in, I was super nervous though. I was like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, you were outnumbered that episode.
Wow. Yeah, powerhouses of personalities too. You guys should check that out. I'm gonna link that on the Throwback Thursday. Those two good episodes, by the way, back-to-back episodes. All right, so you mentioned when you transitioned. How do you like mentally? I know that you already felt like a woman, correct? So knowing that you're going to essentially lose everybody or could lose people, how do you like deal with that?
So I mean, you just really gotta go for it, and it is what it is. I mean, you can theorize over who's gonna stick with you and who you're gonna lose, and I definitely did lose a bunch of people that I was really close to because like they didn't understand or it wasn't part of their belief system or what have you. But that's just the reality of the game, unfortunately. So like you're gonna ruminate on it and you're gonna kind of, I mean, it's like anything else that's hard. You're not going to want to do it. But once you do, you just kind of got to deal with whatever it is. So it's really about just taking the time to gather yourself, and the people that you know are going to be supportive of you no matter what. I would say go to them first, so that way you have a support network before trying to reach out to the people that you think are not going to be as receptive. So it's a little bit of strategically going for what you think is going to be the healthiest for you. But then as far as the fallout, it's just going to be what it is. And you can try to minimize it. You can try to reduce it, but you don't really have any real control over what people think about you and your decisions. So it just is what it is.
So a person like me, I tend to be on the line a bit, because you brought up religion. On one hand, there's my religion, and this is how I grew up. This is what the preacher said and what is interpreted from the Bible, right? And then on the other hand, I'm like, this is real life. I'm not saying, for my religious people, I'm not saying that the Bible's not real life. I am a 100% believer here. But when I have friends like Chae and a slew of other people who are LGBTQ, right? Yeah. It's hard for me to just cut that off for religious purposes. Like, I know what my beliefs are, but I also believe that everybody should be able to be who they are and who they feel like they need to be or they want to be. So how do you handle like friends who still want to be friends with you, but on Facebook they gonna pop a Bible verse or share
not the Bible verse
or share the preacher at the mega church that's really negative against the LGBTQ community?
I mean, just like any other community, the Christian community or the Muslim community or the Jewish community, none of them are monoliths, right? So like, I definitely have tons of Christian friends still. And if they pop a Bible verse up on social media, like, that doesn't have anything to do with me. But if they're using whatever their scripture is to justify oppression of any group of people, then that's where there's an issue. But I grew up in the church. I've been to the mega churches, you know what I mean? I grew up in them. So I get it. And I don't hold any hate for that generally. I mean, there's tons of things in scripture that you can learn and lessons to make yourself a better person. But there are also people that will use those same scriptures to hate people. So it just depends on where you as a person fall in line with your scripture. And the people that I keep around me, there's a reason that they're still around me.
Good answer. Like, in my head, that's what was going on.
Oh my God.
Novacaine, you have any questions or anything to add to that?
I really liked what you said there. Like, basically, whoever accepts you for you, you know. I feel like that goes across the board, though. Like, whether you trans or not, whether you gay, bisexual, straight, whatever, you don't want to be around people that's going to accept you for you, because you don't want that negative energy around. There was something I wanted to ask, and I think I forgot already. I didn't write any questions down. I didn't pre-plan this. Like,
it's all
was like, yeah, Chae is ready now, and I was like, okay.
Listen,
well,
I tapped her like months ago in the last season for this, and it just never lined up to a perfect time. And because of our first episode, I was like, I gotta get her on this time. I needed her perspective for the general conversation.
Okay, so now I remember what I was gonna.
Hey, there it is. It came back.
I was sitting there thinking. I don't know if you saw my eyes starting. Okay, so going all the way back to what you were talking about, like when you did have a wife and everything. when did you realize that you were trans? Like, what made you decide to just take that leap? Because I'm pretty sure for a very long time that you weren't trans, and then you had a wife. So were you straight at that time, or bisexual, or did you not have a label? Like, how did the steps go? Because I don't understand transsexuality. I've never actually had a conversation with a trans person because I was always perceived to be a transphobic person because of my views. I never said I hated trans people. I just said I don't understand. And no one wanted to sit here and actually take their time and help a sister out. So, since you're here
let me do that for you
tonight, since you're here on this show tonight, like, I really want to know, like, what were the steps that, you know, you decided that this is not the life you wanted to live anymore?
Bet. I'm so glad you asked, because I think this is like a fundamental misunderstanding of trans people. I think the perception of trans people is that we decide to become trans one day. Whereas it's more like being gay or straight. You don't really choose. You just kind of are who you are. Okay. Like, I have never found men attractive ever in my life. And I've been approached by so many men, and every time I'm just like, sorry, homie, like, I don't feel nothing towards you. I've been attracted to women my whole life. And I know that's the same for many other people. It's not like, you know, if you're gay, you just decide to become gay one day, right?
Right.
It's the same thing for trans people. Trans people are trans. The difference is that you're born into a body with expectations. Whether you're born with a female body or a male body, there's expectations placed upon your body from birth, right? So if you're a trans person, you have these expectations your whole life, and people are telling you, you're supposed to be this way, you're supposed to be this way, you're supposed to be this way. So I didn't realize that I was trans until I was 25. Because at that point, I had been kicking people in the face for a living for 7 years. So my perception was like, I'm supposed to be this tough macho dude. But I was deeply, deeply depressed. And that's the reason why so many trans people are depressed so often. I think, like, the statistics for suicide on trans people is like 3 or 4 times higher than their cis counterparts. And it's because, like, any real person knows trying to pretend to be someone else for any amount of time, super depressing. But when you extend that to your entire life, that's a miserable existence. So it takes time to do some introspection into, like, okay, well, these are my expectations. Do I feel like these expectations are actually me, or am I just trying to live up to these expectations because that's what I've been told to do? So you got to grapple with that. And then from there, it's trying to get a handle on, you know, how you really identify. Because at first I was like, maybe I'm non-binary, maybe I'm gender fluid. But eventually, like, it took some time, but I was like, no, like, I don't have any fluctuation. I don't want to be androgynous. I don't want to be male and female. Like, I'm just a trans woman. And then once a trans person comes to that truth and realization, they can look back through their entire life and be like, oh, that makes so much sense. I remember distinctly in, like, middle school, one of my friends came up behind me and was like, oh, I thought you were a girl. And it made me happy. And I didn't understand why until I was 25. It was like 10 years later.
It makes sense. 25 makes sense because that's supposed to be our fully matured brain. So that makes sense.
I mean,
for humans. For humans. All of us. Okay? Unfortunately, that's why I said it's supposed to be.
Not me. I didn't mature, so I was like 31, so.
I said your brain. I didn't say you.
I mean, but, like, there are definitely signs through my entire childhood. So if there wasn't someone my entire childhood telling me that I had to man up, then I probably would have figured it out much sooner. studies on when children develop a gender identity is very early, like 3 and 4. I remember distinctly, like, I bought my son when he was 2 or 3 Splatoon, or Splatoon 2, whatever came out during that time. And like every video game, do you want to play a boy character? Do you want to play a girl character? This is a child that grew up with a trans parent, and he very emphatically, I'm a boy. And he always has been. He likes boy stuff. He's a boy. And that's fine. Like, kids know. But when you beat a narrative into a child, not just like as a parent, but as a society, that this is the way that you're supposed to be, that child's probably going to look at that and try to emulate that. But whether that is actually, you know, the personality of that child, that's for them to decide. So for trans people, we just are who we are because of society. A lot of times we don't figure out who we are until much later. But it's never a choice. It's a choice to live the way that we want to live rather than faking being a person and being super depressed. So like, just like gay people, they have the choice to stealth it or come out of the closet, right? But they never chose to be gay. They just chose to be open about it.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Facts. That was good. All right. Another question. Let's get deeper into this.
Head ass.
Let's do it.
BK is such a head ass. Like, it's hard for me to even try to be serious, but then you with the trying to be serious, and then I'm trying to be serious with you, it's not working. I'm gonna keep laughing.
I'm serious.
I'm gonna keep on laughing. Okay, maybe I don't take you seriously then. Say that.
Ooh.
Say that.
Last week it was you old enough to be president. Now it's maybe I don't take. I'm starting to think you don't take me serious. I'm starting to feel some type of way.
Don't you ever feel that way?
Oh,
Only
Lord.
don't take you seriously on Tuesdays.
It's Monday, so we good.
It is Monday.
We're definitely going to talk about video games and choices and how the video game industry has evolved and your thoughts on all of that. But first, let's get into some of the serious stuff. Okay, all of this has been serious, so let's get into some of the deeper stuff real quick. So what is your definition of what makes a woman a woman? Because I know recently that has been like a serious conversation. I think they got a whole documentary about what is a woman. What is it, Jordan whatever that guy's name is. I don't know his name.
Who?
Some guy. I think it's Jordan Peterson or some other guy.
Jordan Peterson, Kermit the Frog head ass.
You talking about the only Jordan I know is Jordan Peele.
No.
That's the only Jordan I know.
I saw the YouTube ad. I refuse to watch the show or the documentary.
I try to stay off of YouTube. If we not on YouTube, I try to stay off of there.
It comes around when you be hanging in the progressive media. You know, they gotta throw in the adversary every now and then. So, because it's such a huge talking point right now, I would like to get your thoughts on that and how society reacts to those types of questions.
Yes, please.
Sure. So, I feel like, specifically like right-wing folks that are anti-trans use this as an argument a lot. So, I see the discourse pretty often, but for like trans people, like, this has been a talking point for us for years and years and years. And the reality of the situation is that a lot of times when having the conversation about trans people, they use the words gender and sex interchangeably, like they are the same word. And it often goes back to biological sex, right? What are your sexual hormones? What are your chromosomes? This and that, right? But that does not define what a woman is. That defines what a biological female is. And even in that, there's a lot of variance. So the, I want to say it was Stanford University had an article like 4 years ago that was titled The Way Sex and Gender bracket, this is in the title, sex and gender are different things, and how they affect like your health. So scientists, for the most part, agree that sex and gender are different things. So when we're talking about biology, that's your biological sex. When we're talking about what makes a man or a woman, that is not a biological issue. That is a sociological question. Because, pop quiz, if you go to a gender reveal party and you see pink, that baby's going to be a what?
A girl.
A girl, right? And then you see blue, you get a boy. But if you go back in time in America, 60 years, it would have been reversed. Like, blue used to be a girl color, pink used to be a man's color, right? So the perception of what is a man or a woman is defined by a society in a specific place and time. So, you consider yourself a man. Maasai warriors don't consider themselves a man until they go and hunt a lion, right? So from culture to culture, what your definitions of a man or a woman are, change. So there is no one like universal, definition of what a woman is. And so when it comes to trans people, we get this as like a gotcha question. Like, oh, you say you're a woman, so define a woman. But that's not the way the definition of a woman works, because it's based on our society. Right now, we say a boy becomes a man at 18. But if we change some laws around and say that they can go to war at 17, all of a sudden a 17-year-old is a man. So I feel like it's a
good point
different
right there.
Exactly. So I feel like it's not really a question of like, what do you find a man or a woman to be? Like, we know based on our society, but we also know if we go across some borders, what is expected of a man or a woman is completely different.
I think the man-woman thing is a very hard thing to define. And even the manliest of men in the manosphere, I've seen all of them typically have different opinions about what a man is. Coming from a man who watched this stuff now because of Tiffany Red, shout out to Tiffany Red. It's just interesting to me to just see the vastness of this conversation and how far it can go and the limitations on it as well. Novacaine, you look like you got something to say.
I was just waiting for you to finish. I thought you was just going to let me you talking about the man thing, and I'm just like,
no, I was just
talking about men's tonight. I'm just sitting here. Like,
3 times in this season already.
So we already know how season 6 is going to be.
You got 3 more times.
So basically, you gonna kick me off? You're not gonna kick me off.
I didn't say that. I didn't say any of that.
Then what's gonna happen then? You gonna push the button?
I push the goddamn button now. I'll stop this show and go to bed. You know I'm old.
I'm gonna go to bed too. Me too.
Continue your point.
Okay, so basically when we do get into the woman versus trans woman, it is going to vary from person to person since we do have so many different opinions. So that's why I said what I said in the last show. Like, when I look at women, I look at it as a biological standpoint. And I understand you said female, use the word female. I always have an issue because I don't look at myself as a female. I am a woman, but woman literally means female human. So that's me. So I just never really understood why we can't just, at least, if you're a trans woman, I understand you want to be trans. I understand your pronouns and what you want me to address you as and how you want me to respect you. But I can't say, for me, I can't say that you are a woman. It's just hard for me because if you have that trans in front of it, it's like, we don't share the same thing, even culturally. We might not even share the same thing culturally as women. Like you said, you're Blasian, so you're in the culture, you know what I'm saying? But you may share more issues that you've gone through throughout life, maybe the way that men have gone through. So that's just something that is hard for me to kind of grasp at the moment, or even this time in life. Me 6 years ago probably wouldn't even understand any of this that's going on, because I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Like I said, like, I just don't know. This point in life is just really hard for me to mesh the two ideas together. Like, I guess it's because I'm not exposed to it. And like I said, I haven't even had a conversation with a trans person on this level. Like, it's been like, hey girl, hey, hi, bye, you know? So, help me, help us. Like,
yeah, well, I think the thing is, you don't need to mesh those two things together at all, because they are different and separate things. So, you can be both biologically female and a woman, just the same way you can be biologically male and a woman, because it's all based on your culture. It's not based on biology at all. Whether you're a woman or not does not have anything to do with your body. Whether you are a man or not doesn't have anything to do with your body. For all of us, if we take away our sexual organs, we're just blank slates out here in a hypothetical. We're still the people that we are, with our experiences and our identity and our values. So if you woke up tomorrow and you were just a blank slate out here, you were just a board, right? You didn't have any sexual organs, you'd still identify as a woman, right?
oh, of course.
Yeah,
Most
so
definitely.
it's separate from your body. So I don't think that trying to put those two things together is the way to go. I think the key is to understand that they are different and separate things. So when someone says, I identify as a woman, and you say, well, I don't think you are a woman. That's just opposing cultures. That's just opposing values, but it doesn't actually go back to anything scientific. It's just your belief system versus my belief system. And then it comes to the point of, well, if you have a different belief system and I have a different belief system, should we not respect each other's belief systems, right? So if I'm a trans woman and I say I'm a woman, I just have a different belief system from you. And if you have a belief system where you don't view me as a woman, you might not call me a woman, but my beliefs call that disrespectful. You know what I mean? So not to say like this interaction is disrespectful, but in general, it's like trans women just want to be recognized as women because sociologically we are. But I think the argument comes down to, well, you don't have a vagina or ovaries, therefore you're not a woman. And that was never the argument to begin with. We understand that trans women, I'm going to speak for trans women right here, but trans women, we understand that we are biologically different than cisgender women. That was never the argument. The argument is that in society, we should be able to live the way we want to live. We're not hurting anybody. We should be able to dress the way we want. We should be able to be referred to as the way we want. We should be able to get jobs and not be denied specifically because we're trans. And we have the highest rates of, murder and assault out of everyone, specifically Black trans women getting the most of that. They have the oppression of being a Black person on top of the oppression of being a trans person. So it goes like a double for them. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's never actually an argument of like, oh, do you identify as a woman? Because it's not an argument. You can't argue my philosophy versus your philosophy and one comes out a winner, right? Philosophies are debated for thousands of years. So you're never going to win that argument. But where someone can take it and win is, oh, but you're not biologically this, therefore you're not a woman. So I feel like it boils down to that a lot. But we never argue that, and they're completely separate things. So it's not like a coherent argument to begin with. You know what I mean?
It's a hard thing to
I completely.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh.
No. I'm not even supposed to be in this conversation.
I completely understand that for sure. That's why I said I can respect everything of what you want to believe in, because I don't want to force my beliefs on someone else myself. That's too much, and I don't want anybody to force their beliefs on me. It's just like you said, it's just the meshing part that's really bothering me, because it's two separate entities. So maybe we need to, as a society, stop trying to combine the two. Like, we can respect you on who you want to be. We can respect you on what you want to do. I'm going to call you your pronouns and say, hey, girl, all day. But when it comes down, and that's the issue. And I kind of feel like when it comes down to it, because just like how the situation with the trans woman that was arrested and in some prison in some female facility in New Jersey, I'm thinking, and got 2 inmates pregnant. So how are you saying I identify as a woman, but I'm still using my male appendage?
Because trans people aren't, they're not defined by their biology. Again, so like, I, as a trans person, I have no desire to get gender reassignment surgery at all. And many trans people don't. It's about your identity. It's not, you might, as a trans person, want to change your body, but, cis people do that also. You know what I mean? Like, plastic surgery is not a rare thing at all. So just like cis people, trans people
crazy right now.
Right. So like trans people might want to change their body to feel more like who they are, but there are plenty of us that have no plans on changing their body at all. I specifically stopped taking hormone replacement therapy. I don't want to do that. So it's not about like what appendage you use for sex. Sexuality is a completely different thing anyway. You can be a trans woman and you can be a lesbian, you can be into men, you can be pansexual, you can be all of that. That's a separate thing also. So like, because I choose to keep my body the way it is, that doesn't make me any less of a woman. I still live my life as a woman. You know what I mean? So that's a separate thing entirely. Like we talked about earlier, no community is a monolith. So trans people, when I hear people say that like they refuse to date trans people, it's the wildest thing to me, because when most people think of trans people, they only think of trans women, right? But if you want someone that answers to she, her pronouns, that was born with a vagina and has no intention of changing that, we have those. If you want someone that goes by he, him pronouns and has male genitalia and doesn't want to change that, we have those too. They might go by he, them or she, them, but it's an umbrella term that goes between trans men, trans women, and non-binary people. So there are people that might want to change their bodies. There are plenty of us that don't.
Okay.
I'm blown a little bit here. You have anything yet? I have literally just become a moderator now.
No, to answer your question. Because you was about to say, do you have anything else to say, Novacaine?
Well, let me go back
no.
for a second.
It's just, go ahead. What'd you say?
Yeah, let me go back to one thing that you had said about me. I definitely, since I didn't figure out I was trans until 25, I definitely lived life as a boy or a man up to that point. So I definitely get what you're saying, that there can be this disparity between the experiences that like a woman has growing up and the experiences that a trans woman would have growing up, depending on, what age they transition or they figured out. But that's really like not the choice of the trans person. Like if it were up to me, I would have been living like this forever ago. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it was these expectations that are placed upon the trans person and these rules that are placed upon the trans person that gives them that life. I would have much rather not had to transition as an adult. right? Like, because there's this awkward, like, adolescent phase for adult trans women where they have to learn how to dress like a woman. You know what I mean? They have to learn how to fit this entirely different role that I much rather would have learned growing up from my parents, but I never got that life. I never got that choice. So it's not like I wanted to have these male experiences. It's just what I got. So it's like, sure, there's a difference, but we didn't choose that difference. We're a victim of that difference.
One last thing.
Go ahead.
About
Fine.
the whole
Say
combo.
one last thing.
So from this whole conversation that I've got today, it seems as though society itself is making the trans experience even harder.
Well, trans people are not new. Trans people have been around since the... I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you were done.
No, you good. No, you good, girl. Listen, go ahead.
Trans people have been around for all of recorded history. Like, if you go back through history, you'll find trans people. We didn't always have the technology that we do to physically transition, but you'll find burial rights for trans people from before we had, you know, from like the dawn of written language. So trans people have always been around. And in the... I know you wouldn't normally think of 1920s Germany as like this great bastion for LGBT people, but they were making advancements towards they were making advancements towards gender reassignment surgery 100 years ago in Germany. But then we know what happened in 1930s Germany. The Nazis came and trans people was on their list, so they wiped out all of that stuff. So the Nazis set us back 100 years as far as trans rights go. So it's being presented a lot as like a new thing, but trans people have always been around.
And a bit of a history lesson today.
It is, for real.
Got the history and the stats.
Like you said, we all know, of course we all know about the gay, you know, we all know that. We know gay, lesbian, but it's like, when you put in the trans on top of that, it's like, we didn't grow up with it. Like,
right, like
it's not something that is, I guess, seen every day in our society, or it's more open now in our society today, where everybody's just comfortable.
I think that might be it right there.
Because, you know, the one joke, because I've always had like this back and forth, even with myself, because I just never really understood. Like, I don't, like, let me say it one more time. I don't hate anybody because of their sexual preference or their identity. Okay.
Get it out.
It's just that I have a hard time understanding these things when I haven't seen it for 30-something years. So it's like I've just started seeing more and more about trans people. Yeah, I knew that trans people existed, but of course there was always, like you said, a negative view of trans people. Always. Even like in the 80s and the 90s. Mm-hmm. So it's never was like an accepting thing for our society. Like, I don't have the whole I mean, I went to church and things, but I don't really have like a deep religious background. Mm-hmm. And I have friends all across the rainbow, but I just never really sat down with a trans person. I really enjoyed this conversation tonight, Chae. Like,
for sure,
it's touching my heart, is massaging my brain.
Wow.
Glad I could massage your brain.
It is though, because when you hear someone else's opinion and what they've been through, you start to think a little bit differently. Your views may change a little bit. But I just think society... Oh, that's what I was trying to say. My favorite joke that always made me go back and forth was that joke when on... What's that show called? Married with Children. And the dude goes, "Bruce Jenner, is that you?" And it was the next door neighbor.
Don't be talking about Darcy like that.
I'm sorry, but it's like one of those things, like, people always, like, Darcy, that's her name. People always had, like, this negative view instead of accepting it.
Yeah. You know, not to say that Darcy
that's for anything.
like Ellen Page.
That's for
not
anything.
Ellen, but
That's for
Elliot
anything.
Page a little bit.
Huh?
That's random. Darcy kind of looks like Elliot Page.
Let me not say it like I never accepted trans people, because I accept everybody. I don't care what you do as long as you're not touching kids. As long as you're not touching kids, I don't care what you do in life. But society just haven't accepted things, huh?
We still got like a whole nother leg of this conversation. You sounding like you're
No, we
Indian.
don't.
Yes, we do. We did not talk about sports.
Let's get into them sports.
We still got 10 minutes. Give me 5 minutes of sports.
We gotta talk about sports.
Give me 5 minutes of sports.
All right,
we're gonna
I'm about
have
to take
5 minutes of me video
Chae,
game nerding out.
You about to see me,
and then we're gonna end the show.
Sports section.
Space Gang. We're about to talk about trans women in sports. Okay,
Let's do it. As your trans former athlete, I'm here for it.
Yes, because you're definitely athletic over there, Miss Taekwondo.
I mean, I don't look like it these days, but I was in there.
So last week we discussed the swimmer. What was
Leah Thomas?
Leah Thomas.
Leah Thomas.
What are your thoughts on that? Because we discussed the reasoning behind it, because some people allegedly were saying that she transitioned and jumped into a whole nother division of sports because because it was easier.
That's allegedly.
Allegedly, of course. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you just think that's like I feel
like that's a crazy thing to say. So, like, for someone to go, especially at the college level, like, you're not even getting paid. So you're saying that, like, this person decided to dramatically increase their rates or chances of being murdered or R-worded or assaulted to get a leg up in a collegiate competition. I'm not buying it, right? You got to go through, to be a trans person, to go through hormone therapy, you have to go through, it's a little bit more lax now, but in a lot of states, you still have to get like written letters from a therapist that you've been seeing for years to even start hormone therapy. And in Leah Thomas's case, you can see that, like, I believe it was 1 or 2 years while she was in transition on hormone replacement therapy that she was still competing with men, and her times tanked because for trans women, hormone replacement therapy is a performance inhibiting drug. They put you on testosterone blockers. What happens when you block testosterone? You lose your muscle mass. So a common thing for trans people, trans women specifically, to see if like their HRT is working is like, oh, I can't open this pickle jar anymore. I go for runs and I get tired way faster. So it wasn't like this thing where like she was like, oh, like I'm not doing great on the men's side, so I'ma just, pull a sneaky one and go over to the men's side. It was probably like years in the making up to the point of going towards the women's side. And Novacaine, I want to go back to something that you had said in the previous show where you don't see trans men going into competition, but you do. Leah Thomas competed with a trans man in the women's competition. There's a trans man that just decided not to undergo hormone therapy. And then we can think of Mac Beggs from Texas. Mac Beggs was famous for being a trans man, so biologically female, was on hormone therapy for trans men. So that means taking testosterone, and they would not let him wrestle with the men. So this man is ragdolling people. This man is ragdolling these other girls. And like, you see the picture and these girls are so much smaller than Mac is. He is so much bigger because he's on testosterone, and they wouldn't let him compete with the males. So it's a problem on all sides. And just to
I was saying on the last episode that it wasn't that trans men don't compete. I was saying that we don't really see any like big talk about trans men, like
because they're not like
anytime there's some type of trending topic or any argument about trans people, there's the number one conversation is trans women. I just never really see a lot about trans men conversations.
The last time I heard something about a trans man, or any time I hear anything about a trans man, it's usually when they get pregnant, or they're talking about being pregnant, or remember what was Chaz a few years back?
Yeah,
I remember that story, but other than that, I've rarely,
and then always
I don't think I've ever heard of like any other news that's national breaking.
I don't know. Chae, can you enlighten us this evening? Like,
it sounds like there's a bias still, by the way.
Yeah, there's a bias.
It's because trans women are not viewed as women, we're viewed as men. So we're viewed as a threat, whereas trans men are not viewed as men, they're viewed as women, so they're not viewed as a threat at all. And then when you start to take hormones into it, it's the complete opposite, because for trans women, we're taking this performance inhibiting drug. I used to take HRT. I lost so much muscle mass from being a competitive fighter to then going and taking HRT. But for trans men, it's the opposite, because they're taking testosterone. So they put on muscle, they put on bone mass, they become significantly stronger than they are. But for society just sees them as, tomboys or like, weightlifting women, basically. So trans men are not seen as a threat. That's why you always only hear about trans women.
Okay.
Everything you said about the HRT and vice versa. I brought up a study last week on the show about how they tested a number of trans men and women in the military, and how those trans women numbers went down, and how trans men numbers went up. So, and that was over a 2-year period. So, last question's about the whole trans women in sports, and then we'll be done with the conversation, I promise. What do you feel about, say, having trans people in their own division? Because I have my own thoughts on this one, but I want to hear your thoughts.
So I think if you look at the way that sports are now, they're not even equal, right? Like the players in the WNBA on average make 1% of what an NBA player makes, right? So if we keep those same numbers, you got, you're going to give trans people 1% of what WNBA players make? Craziness. And then there's going to be a whole 6 of us in the entire country. You know what I mean? Trans people are not, there's not many of us. Sure, you see us around, but as far as finding elite level athletes countrywide to fill up whole teams, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think you're going to find a league of elite level basketball players that happen to be trans, and even if you do, they're not going to be paid fairly. You know what I mean? I think this is maybe not the solution, but a part of the issue that nobody actually talks about with trans people in sports is we did not choose these bodies. The reason that there are perceived advantages is because we were not allowed to transition younger in life. So transitioning for children is many years of therapy, and then as they're approaching adolescence, they might put them on hormone blockers just so their bodies don't change, and that stays on them for several years until surgeries don't happen for children at all, I believe. I think in some places they're trying to lower it down to 17, but vast majority of the US, you can't get gender reassignment surgery until you're 18. So you just stay on either hormones or these hormone blockers. So you have time as a child or as an adolescent to go through therapy, to talk to your parents and make those decisions. But most of us weren't allowed to do that. So if we were just allowed to go through these processes as children and choose the bodies, there wouldn't be this conversation of, oh, well, she decided to transition as an adult in her collegiate career, therefore she has these advantages. She never wanted those advantages. If you would have let her transition as a teenager, she would have had a body very similar to the women that she's competing with. So, as you guys know, as Black people, systemic oppression is about creating issues and then going back and blaming those oppressed people for those issues, right? Just like with us, like, they didn't teach us English for the longest time, and then as Black people, we still have subpar education in our communities, but then they'll come back and be like, oh, well, you don't talk like us, you're uneducated, when they created those issues, right? So for trans people, it's, oh, well, you have an advantage in sport. I didn't choose this. You didn't let me transition until I was an adult anyway. I could have transitioned at 14 and been on testosterone blockers, and I wouldn't have this extra body mass. I wouldn't have bigger bones. I don't want that. I would much rather be a smaller person that fits in with, I'm 5'11". I tower over most women. I don't like that because my rates of being murdered for standing out are much higher than cis women. So what nobody ever talks about is that we're a victim of the system that didn't let us change our body when we wanted to, and then they blame us for having these bodies.
You know,
Okay.
I definitely have. We were supposed to talk about video games, but in all
That's gonna have to wait.
Yeah, in all honesty, I wanted to end the conversation there. That was much more powerful than anything that could have came after that. So I think this is actually a really great place to stop. So there you go laughing. Why are you laughing?
No, you know I just told you at the beginning. And then like, wait, BK, when you serious, right? You always hit one of these.
The Kubrick stare, for real. Head down. Yeah.
And it's like, you don't have to look at the camera like that.
I need them to know. I need them to know and feel my seriousness.
Okay. Who are your top 5 rappers of all time?
I'm bad at lists, but I'll try. Biggie, Gift of Gab, Kendrick, A$AP Rock.
Oh, okay.
And dang, who would I give number 5 spot to?
Apparently, number 5 is always the hardest.
Number 5 is always tough. It's always
I don't know, fam. I've been listening to a lot of T Grizzly, so I'm just gonna say T Grizzly for now.
not the T Grizzly.
I'm sorry.
That's your top 5. That's your top 5.
It is for
It's
now.
a solid 5.
It's a solid 5.
It's a solid 5.
It really is. All right, Chae, tell everybody
you
where
so
to find
much.
you.
Absolutely. At Chae Cantrip, ChaeCantrip. Just Google me. You'll find me.
Y'all go support her post because, again, the art is dope as hell. I gotta get a piece one day when I can afford it. You know, I'm broke right now. So when I can afford it,
I gotta peep your artwork.
Absolutely.
The anime stuff be so dope. It's all dope, but it's mostly anime stuff, right? Chae, most definitely appreciate you coming through.
For sure.
It's a
Appreciate
long time
you.
coming. Been trying to get you back on here since season 1. So
Yes, Chae, and thank you for coming because we collectively been trying to get you on the show since last season.
Same. I wanted to, and then my laptop died. So
It'd be like
I remember that. I forgot that.
Yeah.
It'd be like that.
Yeah, for
It'd be
sure.
like that.
It's always something. The Space Gang. If you want to join in on this conversation, anywhere you see these videos and clips, make sure you jump in the conversation, especially over on YouTube. We're going to put this video up. Alright, Space Gang. That's our show for today.
Did we miss anything? Let us know in the comments below or wherever you're listening to us.
Do us a favor and head over to www.thebkspadeshow.com. That's space with a Z. You can get all the blogs, the audio, the video, and some really cool merch.
And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave us that 5-star rating YouTube. Like, comment, share, and subscribe.
To the BK Spadez Show, where society meets pop culture. I am your host, the BK Spadez, here with my very lovely co-host,
Novacaine, baby.
Alright, Spadez gang, thanks for tuning in.